Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters, members of the media, thank you all for coming. I wish, of course, at the outset to acknowledge all of you, but starting with the social protocol, I want to recognize our Dharmacharya of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Pandit Dr. Ramprasad Parashram. He is, of course, the founding chairman of the United National Congress. We also have this morning Imam Rashid Karim, a social activist, a man of the cloth. He is always noble in his pursuits, a resident of Chaguanas West, a constituent, and a very great and enabling friend. We also have here the Vice President of the National Council of Indian Culture, Mr. Surajday Mongru, my uncle. I'm very happy to have him. And the President General, my father, President General of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, Pandit Krishna Rambally is here. Pandit Rishi is also here. I saw him earlier. All of you, social activists. Too many names to call at this point in time, but all social activists, the lifeline, the blood of the UNC, all of you, I welcome you and I want to thank you for being here this morning. I start this morning by stating that I, Dinesh Rambally, am and I remain a lifetime member of the United National Congress, and I am presently the Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West. As such, I have an abiding responsibility to do right by my constituents and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. A responsibility which I take very seriously. Everything I say this morning is directly related to these principles. Yesterday, Thursday, 11th April 2024, I submitted my nomination form to the UNC party to be reselected as the UNC candidate to contest the Chaguanas West constituency in the next general elections 2025. You can see this is a digital copy, and of course my receipt, I paid my monies. So I have my receipt here. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is my commitment to continue my representation of the constituents of Chaguanas West and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You see, after 4 years as an MP, I remain committed to serving my constituency and country. I am committed to working towards a UNC victory in the next general elections in 2025. A stronger UNC means a stronger Trinidad and Tobago. I ask you, look where the country has reached after 8 years of the PNM. Children are being beheaded. This is too horrendous for us to contemplate, and we have further to fall under the PNM. I have called this meeting to address grave and legitimate concerns about the UNC's ability to achieve victory in the United National Congress in the next general elections. The issue is, ladies and gentlemen, that the UNC in its present form cannot win any election, and certainly not the next general election. The party has to be revamped, reorganized, and revitalized. Today, I place my political life on the altar in the hope that I can cause meaningful change within the United National Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters, when I took the oath of office to serve the constituency of Chaguanas West and our great people of this beautiful country, it was done in accordance with our constitution, the supreme law of the land, and I also took this oath on the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So, this oath of office was not merely procedural, but a highly personal, spiritual oath which binds me to serve without fear or favor. this morning my oath of office and conscience demand that I speak out in the hope of bringing change that is so desperately needed. You may ask, why am I speaking out now? The biggest crisis facing our nation is first and foremost the incompetent, the corrupt, and reckless governance coming from the Rowley-led PNM. People have lost confidence not only in the cabinet, but in almost every single institution which are critical to running this country. Communities are gripped with fear to do the simplest of things we used to take for granted. Not so long ago, people were afraid to go out. Now they are also afraid to stay at home. They were afraid to sit in their porches. Now they are afraid to go to sleep in their bedrooms. Long ago, if you were a shopper, you might be targeted. Today, if you are a business owner, you might be facing extortion demands. Now you tell me, is that the direction any civilized society should be going? And that is why a genuine alternative to this government is imperative. The only true challenge is a reorganized United National Congress. And I want to say failure to reorganize now is burning that chance to take charge. So for all of our sakes, the UNC must win the next general election. And let me state what the national community already knows. The UNC's inability to win the next elections or any elections stems from the continued failure of the leadership of Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. I saw a news article this morning saying that Kamla said that she will serve till the end of her days. That means that it will be opposition for the UNC until the end of her days. I would prefer not to be so open and or harsh, but I just cannot in good conscience stand by and watch as the UNC party, which was born out of the struggle of our forebears and built with the sweat, the blood, and the virtuous ideals deteriorate under her. We must be clear in our minds that a legitimate critique of her leadership and her leadership tenure is not an attack on the UNC party. The UNC existed before Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, and it will continue to exist after her. So, while I am compelled by my duty to discuss some harsh realities, I do so in the unwavering commitment to building a better United National Congress. After losing 2 consecutive general elections, I have seen nothing from Mrs. Persad-Bissessar that indicates she has learned from her mistakes or indeed she has the capacity to correct them. Brothers and sisters, we can't keep singing the same old song that the best government ever was under Kamla, when after winning in 2010 with 29 seats to 12 PNM, we proceeded to lose the 2015 general elections, and again in 2020. We can't keep fooling ourselves. So the foremost priority must be to restore confidence in the UNC's leadership so that they can deliver the population from the clutches of the PNM. In a modern democracy, there is no place for leadership without accountability. Leaders in general must be challenged if their actions are falling below what is constitutionally, morally, and reasonably expected of them. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the opposite seems to prevail, and the unwillingness to take responsibility, resign, and make way for new leadership after a failure is a symptom of our time, unfortunately. We must all ask ourselves, under the democratic system that we follow, why has it been so seemingly dishonorable to challenge the leadership of the incumbent? After all, a party should be run on principles, not personalities. It is not a royal family affair. It is political suicide to throw your name in the leadership ring under the present UNC regime. You see, blindly following a party leader will never allow us to find our way back into government. Too many issues of credibility. And we do have issues of credibility and alleged wrongdoing, which will never be shaken off. How then can we expect to be relevant to today's intelligent and discerning electorate? People have asked me some questions which I myself cannot adequately answer. Why did the opposition not fully repeal the property tax when they had a chance? My good colleague, Deputy Political Leader Dr. Rudal Munilal, said it was because the PNM people who were in the relevant ministries stopped the cabinet from repealing the property tax. Imagine that the tail is wagging the dog. People are now asking if the UNC is merely seeking political mileage out of the present situation, where the property tax is being implemented so that people can see the UNC as the hopeful choice to reverse it. Will the next election mantra of the UNC be again, axe the tax, for a second time running? Mind you, I am not in support of implementation of the property tax. Get that clear. Not what is being proposed, for sure. But these are questions which people are asking. So despite being so incensed over some of these things, they are, I say, justified in these concerns. And I say these are credibility issues. Despite being so incensed as well about what is being revealed at the SSA under the PNM, do you know why the country is not marshalling its troops and rallying around the UNC? Victor Roberts, you are here. Why are troops not marshalling around the UNC throughout the country? Because Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her then cabinet selected someone named Reshmi Ramnarayan. And that is an infamous fiasco which everyone is well aware of. Although you had another occasion, you also had a serious case of a PNM attorney, a sitting attorney general, interfering with the witness Vincent Nelson and encroaching on the independent office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The population remained alive to the allegation that someone drawn from the UNC had the monies paid into their account. These are serious matters, you know. And there is no turning to the present UNC for deliverance. So these matters of political perception, political errors, and issues of credibility are real things which exist and cannot, brothers and sisters, it cannot be ignored if we want to win the next general election. Acknowledging the good work done in the past does not absolve us as responsible party members of our duty to also confront our shortcomings. We must confront the fact that we have been unable to win general elections. For all these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, there must be a clear distinction in how the party is to be run versus how it has been running. Ladies and gentlemen, we have done this before, you know. The UNC of the late, great Mr. Basdev Pandey, 1995 to 2001, was the most successful government in this country's history. Look at the data on economic growth, crime reduction, educational access and infrastructure, and distribution of wealth. The UNC of 2010 to 2015, despite some errors, did better than the PNM. Let me speak a little bit on party issues which need to be addressed. Under the present leadership, there is no provision of an environment to have discussion that is truly free and informative. I say this to you, people of Trinidad and Tobago, so you will question the organizational ability and readiness of the United National Congress to win the next general elections under Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. One never knows what is the agenda of any proposed meeting. Nothing starts on time or runs on time. And you all know everything is nocturnal. There are post-facto debates of bills in the parliament, in the caucus. As a matter of fact, very rarely do we meet before debating bills or matters affecting the party as a whole. So we are unable to properly caucus positions, which we are required to do for the sake of intellectual and political integrity and mutual support amongst members. Under the present leadership, we have had a collapse of one budget debate. This illustrates a lack of structure and discipline in the party. These are things that speak to party structure and organization, and they require urgent attention. Ladies and gentlemen, parliamentary debates on government policy that require in-depth analysis are often neglected, with little or no coordination before debates on key bills. In more than one instance, my colleagues and I have debated bills, including the anti-gang legislation, without knowing how the party intended to vote until the time to vote. This is simply not how a party serious about winning government conducts its affairs. I make no apologies. Get me clear, straight and direct. I make no apologies for stating the following matters. But before I do so, before I continue, I ask you to make the distinction of what is really in the interest of the United National Congress as a party, as opposed to what is in the interest of the present leadership. The UNC held a national congress a couple years ago, at which, you would not believe, at which one of its own members was assaulted as he attempted to raise an issue or probably a motion on the floor. He was physically removed from the hall and pushed and shoved outside by an activist close to the political leader. To date, neither the UNC NATEX nor the political leader, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, has condemned such thuggery. Mind you, the said activist is on public record as saying that he was instructed by a sitting MP to engage in assaulting the party member. This is what the party has come to. I ask you whether this is acceptable in seeking the best interests of the party, the UNC, and in seeking the best interests of the future of Trinidad and Tobago. The present UNC leadership's idea of a family day is to walk with your cooler, curry duck, rum and roti, are no longer the main fare at family events only, you know. Those things are acceptable. That is pastime. You can't be vexed about that. That is our part of our culture, our pastime. But these fanfare events, these have made their way into the party's professional modus operandi. And as a recent case in point, it was all over the social media. Recent local government election screening at the party headquarters a stone throw away from here was about cooking curry duck and roti, no doubt accompanied by beverages and moko jumbies and tassa to boot. You tell me if that is the image of a professional party. While this was taking place, there was no consideration for students writing exams who complained that they were being disturbed throughout the night by the loud music. Surrounding, some of you are here, mind you, surrounding residents of Orchard Gardens also complained bitterly about the noise and the traffic. This is now the iconic party image, no pun intended. Councillors and party activists are constantly being mandated to attend protests outside the parliament. I am not disclosing any party secret here, when I say this, because it is on camera, social media, local news, print and otherwise. It's the same councillors and party activists coming out to support, not the UNC party, but they're coming out to support Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Party loyalists have been taken advantage of, and many have complained that they do not know what is going on. They are simply doing what has been demanded of them, inclusive of taking time off from work and whatever else is needed. I, for one, I want to make it clear, I do agree that demonstrations are required for ordinary voices to be heard against this incompetent government, this uncaring PNM government. But the present leadership is taking advantage of the downtrodden plight of some of these party faithful, the loyalists, and instead is using them to promote their own continuation in the political sphere. We must not for one moment underestimate our present leadership, which collectively has years of experience under their belt, but which seems bent on perpetuating their own cult, seemingly out of vanity. In this process, ladies and gentlemen, they are wreaking havoc amongst the trusting UNC party supporters. I, Dinesh Rambally, will not stand for that. To this end, I feel compelled to discharge a duty I feel to those persons who would want to know the truth from an insider's perspective, and hence the continuation of this press conference. I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that my aim today is to remind UNC members that we are greater than our individual components. If we are sincerely interested in building this United National Congress Party, if we are interested in building the UNC brand, it is only an honest critique of the current management style which will suffice. I want to turn to something which is very critical and continues to be controversial. Stand Your Ground law. Stand Your Ground law is controversial legislation. It is a controversial legislative initiative. My two brothers are here in law, Kyle Taklal Singh, Stefan Ramkisoon. They will tell you this is a clear departure from the common law developing over centuries. America is a prime example of how Stand Your Ground law has taken an extreme twist from what it was originally meant to do. However, I do support Kamla Persad-Bissessar in this point, and I did. In battling the scourge of crime, some initiatives are bound to be controversial. New ideas, however, must be debated with a healthy regard for constitutional rights, democratic principles, nation building, and cohesion and the safety of the citizens. In this regard, I support a revisit to laws which will deal with the application of self-defense law to the extent that we can see a transference of the fear into the soulless and dreaded minds of the criminals. But when Mrs. Persad-Bissessar chooses to trivialize and sensationalize on whatever else eyes such an important issue with loose talk for dramatic effect, like, well, we all know it, load the matic, empty the clip, knock it on the head, knock it again, it reeks of irresponsibility. One would have hoped that Stand Your Ground laws could have been properly debated for creating proper legislation. Mention must be made of the child who was removed from her home because as she was holding a gun, an adult was telling her, crack it. We saw that video circulating. This is the same kind of loose talk percolating into our homes with dire consequences. Trinidad and Tobago, I ask you, open your eyes. Where do you want this country to go? In fact, while we want peace, safety, and security for our families and especially our children, I find it personally difficult to witness how Mrs. Prasad Bisesa politicizes the state of crime in this country. Imagine on the day of the funeral of Andrea Barrett, we were in the parliament debating the evidence amendment bill. And well into the debate, there was no firm direction from the leadership as to whether we were in support of the bill or not, until, I should say, the very last moment, when the mood in the country was overwhelmingly angry. Then we knew that we would support it. It must be heartbreaking for citizens that the leaders cannot come together, that they will not even talk to each other in an effort to find common ground to solving crime. And I want to make that statement clear, that I'm not blaming Mrs. Prasad Bisesa alone for that. Squarely, I blame the members of the government led by Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Why can't leaders lead the society? That's why we call them leaders. They are supposed to lead. As the results of, I want to move on to local government. As the results of local government election in 2023 clearly show, the UNC failed to make any substantial gains among the electorate. It was clear that the Rowley-led PNM ran a strategy or something resembling an election campaign, whereas Kamla led and ran a full-fledged general election campaign. That was for last year's local government election. The UNC failed to win any new corporations or make any significant inroads in marginal areas. If the UNC cannot generate public support beyond its core base against the worst PNM government in history, then the future of the UNC, and indeed the country, is in serious jeopardy. Despite these concerns, the leadership puzzlingly continues to insist that the UNC won the local government elections and refuses to accept the questions that need to be asked and answered about the manner in which the local government elections were coordinated by the UNC and indeed the entire management of the United National Congress. You see, the decision is immediately, when these things happen, to immediately announce after the local government elections that the party was shifting gear to general election mode. And you know why that was? It was to betray any attempt to conduct a post-mortem of the recently concluded local government elections. The subsequent announcement in November 2023 to reopen party nominations for constituency seats, I should say, was arguably a blatant attempt to threaten sitting members of parliament with removal if they express any concern about her poor decision-making and losing streak. I will say more in light of this, in light of recent developments in the public domain. Ladies and gentlemen, party organs are presently operating under the direct and absolute control of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. Essentially, these groups only ask how high to jump when she says to jump. So there is no desire to streamline systems and procedures and organs of the party to function as empowered entities operating consistent with the party's constitution and, of course, the interests of the membership. Do you know that MPs donate part of their salary, monthly salaries, to the party with no accountability whatsoever on how these monies are being spent? Fundraisers are also held occasionally, but again, there is usually no acceptable level of transparency and accountability. I want to make it abundantly clear, and everybody who knows me knows that I, for one, refuse to solicit funds from members of the public if I have no confidence in how it is being spent. Very few people will be able to say, and one is actually sitting in this room, that I solicit funds for things in the constituency. And they are contented that there is accountability to the people. No one knows the status of the party's headquarters building fund. We are unaware whether the party is in debt. Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa has no desire to increase transparency in party affairs, in matters of financial accounting. So whether it is the membership list or financial accounts, there has been no transparency. No viable, I want to make that clear, no viable and victorious party aims to behave in this way. The supporters of the party must demand answers, and you are entitled to those answers. Some officials close to Mrs. Prasad Bisesa exert undue influence, and I have to say, unofficial party decisions which do not reflect the interests of the MPs. I am saying that. And therefore, the wider party membership and or the constituents' views are not being reflected. This is not new information. Also, the leader has consistently refused to reduce unnecessary tensions among MPs, councillors, and party officials, including constituency executives. In some cases, party executives are being mandated to actively undermine the MPs without clear demarcation of roles and responsibilities, which the leadership should have made clear by now. The UNC party cannot, it just cannot become a lean, clean fighting machine capable of beating the PNM. I want to tell everybody here today, that if you think that you could depend on the default factor, which is that the unpopularity of Rowley and the PNM will be so high that you will automatically get into government, that's not going to work. 2020 showed us that. So the UNC party supporters deserve better. It is my view, as well as that of some other members in the UNC party, that the present leadership of the party does not select councillors and party officials on proven track records, national respect, unquestioned integrity, loyalty to the party, and an unwavering commitment to serve the country. Rather, blind loyalty to Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa is the only criteria. Take it from me, I could tell you. The UNC party continues to participate in the political landscape with the barest minimum of research. We are in 2024. We are supposed to be preparing for general elections 2025. And we don't have the barest amount of research to tell us something empirically driven that we can beat the PNM, we are likely to beat the PNM, or something resembling that. As alluded to earlier, ladies and gentlemen, the party is yet to conduct postmortems after elections. The leadership is not interested in data-driven decision-making in the party. One cannot get away from obvious questions, such as why did close to 70% of voters stay at home in the last local government elections instead of coming out and voting for the UNC? I know the answer to that already. It's cliche now. Well, local government elections is always a low voter turnout. That is the answer. Where are we going with this? If more and more people complaining about drains and roads and infrastructure, it shocks me that they're not coming out for local government elections to cast their vote. So I say that it is a sign on account of the lack of confidence in the present leadership. That is what it is. UNC supporters may be shocked to learn how little the leadership is involved in managing party affairs on a daily basis, and that the UNC party is largely being run on press releases. On this note, I want to say this, I am no fan of the PNM, and I'm not a fan of Dr. Rowley. But on this note, we are in political battle. Our job is to know our opponents better than they know themselves. And on this note, I want to say, whilst Dr. Rowley is attending 6 a.m. media interviews in person, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is being pre-recorded and broadcasted at 6 a.m. Do you think the public is not aware of these obvious differences between the two leaders? Do you think that they didn't know that that 6 a.m. broadcast was a rebroadcast? Furthermore, The leadership has created and fostered an internal culture where all attempts at scrutiny and accountability are shut down, conducting itself as an unelected monarch rather than the leader of a party, accountable to its members and the country. More recently, a sinister narrative is being encouraged where those with reservations about the way in which the party is being managed are now being labeled as PNM agents. This type of insecure and undemocratic behavior would easily fit into the authoritarian regimes of North Korea. I am under no delusion, ladies and gentlemen, because I know this might be a question the media will want to ask. I am under no delusion of the political retribution and malicious attacks which will be hurled at me as well after this press conference. I am under no delusion about that. But if I choose to stay quiet, I would have failed my people, my faith, and my conscience. In the national interest, there really is no other choice. And I too expect to be called an agent or an affiliate of the PNM, because that is what the present leadership does when it cannot process the truth. But I am no PNM. And so I want to send the message to them. They can start looking for excuses to explain me away. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you, you can be assured that I intend to continue my vociferous fight against the Rowley-led PNM. If anyone visits the UNC Facebook or whatever they call it, Facebook page or website, they will not see contributions or press releases or any work being done by several UNC MPs, including myself. One must question, why is that? This is nothing short of disrespectful to these MPs and all of them, the people who they serve. It is ironic that while Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar demands accountability from this failed Rowley-led government, she herself is sidestepping accountability. And she's sidestepping accountability of her own actions. She has singularly introduced the idea of inheritance tax as a proposal of the government, as a scare tactic for persons to turn to her for deliverance. I myself am clueless when people ask me, but you're a lawyer, you don't know what that is? I say, well, I don't know where that come from. But what it shows is there is therefore no question in my mind that if it is we continue with the leadership as it stands now, we are going to go down the road of gloom and doom. That is what it will be. There is no record of inheritance tax to be introduced by the government up to the time of this meeting. There is therefore no question, ladies and gentlemen, in my mind, that as long as Kamala remains as leader of the UNC, the party will achieve a political credibility rating of nil, and it will limp along losing a third straight general election in 2025. Imagine what that means. Imagine that means that Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley would have won 3 successive elections. Imagine that. I maintain that the United National Congress is the only party, it is the bulwark against this oppressive and brutal PNM regime. But if the UNC is allowed to be destroyed by leadership which is only concerned about propagating its own cult of personality and in remaining in their position to enjoy its trappings, then the future of the UNC and our nation is in grave danger. Ladies and gentlemen, everything I have said here today is being said out of love for our party. It is being said out of love for this great party, United National Congress. The party is bigger, as I said, than any one individual. And it is certainly bigger than Kamala Persad-Bissessar. We must ask, why is there a no acceptance stance of genuine opposition to candidacy of a leader? How many good people have been thrown aside because of character assassination, fear-mongering, and political maliciousness. When some of my colleagues publicly vocalized that the UNC is a one-party, one-leader machinery, they need to clarify, and I hope the media take them up on this, they need to clarify whether they meant one leader for life. Right? Ask them if that is what they support. So when they say one party, one leader, I didn't know it had two parties with different leaders in the UNC. But is it that they are saying really that it is one party, one leader for life? Treatment, and I want to deal with this matter because I have remained quiet. I have bitten my tongue and I have remained quiet on this matter. I want to tell you all here today, treatment of MPs Rushton Parry, Anita Haynes, Rai Ragbir, and Rodney Charles further fortifies my conviction here today that the leadership of the UNC is failing the party. That is my response to what it is the media has been asking all the time. Why Rambally quiet? I want to tell you, they have not only called, and this is what is critical, they have not only called for internal elections to be held, they have called for the adherence to the constitution of the party, of the UNC. You imagine somebody is calling for adherence, upholding the constitution, and they're being battered for that? And we really feel we could take on the PNM on a credibility matter? According to the UNC constitution, internal elections are due in June. How can the population trust the leadership of our party with the governance of the country when the management of our internal party affairs is in question? How is that possible? And I want to lay this down here today, with the greatest respect to my other parliamentary colleagues. Not the four I just called. With the greatest respect to my other parliamentary colleagues. What was inherent in their plainly pathetic reactions was an appalling lack of courage, disinclination to tell the truth, or I should say to tell the direct truth, over-reliance on sentimentalism, motivation of seeking self, and recklessness as to the welfare of the membership of the party and the people of our country. That is what I picked up in their responses to these four MPs simply saying, we want elections to be called. Are these other MPs really reflecting the views of their constituents and party members, or are they simply saying what is convenient to them? While I cannot speak to other party executives, other party constituency executives, I fully expect after this, if not already it started, the defunct Chaguanas West executive to awaken from their slumber and to take instructions to attack me. Because some of them fellas can't read and write, Imam. Right? So they'll have to take some written, drafted instructions to attack me. They have not held one single meeting or accomplished a single task in relation to Chaguanas West. Not one. When I want to just pause here, when Caroni was flooded the last time around with the riverbank, Imam, you sent food. NGO sent food. The Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, let me leave that there. But dealing with Chaguanas West Constituency Executive, not a single soul called and said, MP, you want one bottle of water? Not once. And that is the truth. Despite this, they will somehow find time now, as they did in relation to MP Parry, MP Haynes, and others, to go on Facebook and TikTok. One of them is a TikTok artist apparently, right? To publish a statement attacking me. I want to remind them and all constituency executive in the party, all the constituency executives, that their constitutional role is to mobilize and consult with the members of the party, and not to take instructions from those whom they may wish to protect. I have heard it said, that the call for these internal elections are premature. And I think yesterday it was, it is all a storm in a teacup or something like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know any right-minded, civic-minded, reasonably minded, sensibly minded person will tell you that an election is a process. An election don't just be you wake up one morning and you go and cast your vote. An election is a process. It might not be sake and roti and curry and duck. I admit that, right? And having cook-off at the party headquarters, I admit that. But it is serious business. It involves planning, consultation, allowance for registration of members, regularization of existing members, promulgation of election rules, appointment of an election committee, selection of venues, and I could go on, etc., etc., etc. And all of this, mind you, that I am saying, this chronology of events that we should be seeing towards an election, all with meaningfully stipulated time frames leading up to the date of the elections. So I don't know how you could say, well, this is a premature, or whatever they call it, premature call for internal elections. There's absolutely nothing taking place that has been suggesting, even remotely, that we are heading in that direction of accountability. So the current leadership always demands the highest standards of integrity in elections. Otherwise, and I agree with that, but it is therefore hypocritical in our own party for the current leadership to hide an election date in its back pocket while it ostensibly proceeds with screening for an election that is due in 2025. That's a fact. Hiding the internal election date, which is due in June 2024, while pretending to prepare for general elections, which is due September to November, around that time in 2025, is mama guy. And utter foolishness. So I want to say today, to the NATEX and to the political leader, stop treating the rank and file members of this party with the kind of levels of disrespect that we are seeing. Give them their elections and announce it now. Announce it right now. Don't tell members of the media you're showing up headquarters 1 o'clock and nobody will show up. Let us stop that. Members of the media, I told you all 10 o'clock. What time did we start here this morning? A man said 10. Members of the media said 10 o'clock on the dot. Thank you very much. Please cover me very well. Any reading of our party's constitution shows that our party is meant to be a democratic one. That's what our party is supposed to be. So we must therefore not only comply with the letter of the constitution and elections, but the spirit and the intent of the constitution, something that I as a lawyer learned from my junior, he's not so junior to me anymore, but Mr. Kyle Taklal Singh. They practice this law every day in the courts. The rabid, mindless, and inexplicable attacks on MPs, MP Parry, MP Haynes, and others, simply because they called for compliance with our party's constitution and saying that elections must be called when elections are constitutionally due, is symptomatic of a leadership that is weak, insecure, and afraid to face the membership. I say today to Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and the NATEX account that they must account to the rank and file members of this party, and they must at least now, during the internal elections or otherwise, let them face the party. Let them face the party. In that way, the party will be forced to account to the population. Internal elections is not only an internal thing, That is a procedure of accountability to the wider public too. When the wider public sees democracy at work inside the UNC, they're going to say, yes, that party chose this person. That party decided, notwithstanding all of the complaints of Rambally, that they're still sticking with Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Let it be. But call the elections. And that is how the internal party politics will face off with the general population. And there will be confidence. People have confidence in us and in general elections when it is called. That we are a proper party. We have something we could hold on to. We have some moral authority. Leaders have I want to make this point very clear. Leaders have come before in our party. Leaders may come after in our party. But no leader must ever deny you the membership, what is constitutionally due to you. I say again, halt the screening process. It's a sham, it's a farce. But I did my part because you have to submit. Halt that screening process and of candidates and announce the date for internal elections now. The United National Congress, upon accepting me as a candidate in 2020, presented me to the population, and I want to quote it as follows. Dinesh Rambally is a true son of the soil. That's what the party said that about me, eh? And I wear that on my chest. They said Dinesh Rambally is a true son of the soil, having been raised within the constituency of Chaguanas West, where he has contributed significantly to the social, economic, and cultural development of the community. This is what they went on to say. Coming from a family within the constituency, Dinesh is an attorney at law with over 19 years' experience, which has included selfless humanitarian efforts, as he has consistently fought for the rights, well-being, and way of life of citizens based on his vision of equity for all. I just quote that back for you to underscore that I have always been committed to working for my community. But the time has come to go beyond work. For the people of Chaguanas West, my friends, my family, and my country, I have decided to take a stand and speak out, knowing full well that I have a political bullseye now. I had some before, but now it gets bigger. Political bullseye on my back. But I want to say, despite the consequences, whatever the consequences of my doing so, do not daunt me whatsoever. I remain inspired by the courage of the consummate warrior. And we have religious leaders here. I remain inspired by the courage of the consummate warrior, Arjun. And it is said, whose relentless pursuit of truth and political righteousness came at tremendous personal cost. Time is a luxury we do not have. And according to Mahatma Gandhi, the future depends on what we do in the present. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of the UNC depends on what we do now. We must undertake the necessary work of rebuilding our great party. We must act now. Today, I commit to doing all within my power to reform and strengthen the UNC, to strengthen, to revitalize, to reorganize the UNC so that we can provide the best alternate government in the interim until the next general elections. And come next general elections, we can become the next government. And I'm committed to doing so for the sake of country, not for self. So I invite all, I plead as I invite all like-minded individuals to join me in this mission. I thank all of you for being here this morning. So I want to thank members of the media for being here, and if anyone has any questions, I am sorry to have kept you all this long, but some of you were really running me down on my phone for the last 2 weeks, so if anyone has any questions.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Kimberly Fletcher, Guardian Media Limited. You heard the name of the head speaking about an attack now being on you, right? Like your other colleagues, Rustan Parry and others, who have stand up against Kamala Persaud-Bissess's leadership and is calling for restructuring. You said you know that you could be under attack now, but how do you intend to deal with that? Let's say the internal election is called and she is re-elected. What is your next step in treating with that if you are not even selected to be the candidate for your constituency again?
Okay, so let me take that in parts, right? The first part is how I intend to deal with the attacks. I welcome those attacks. But what I really mean by that, when I say I welcome those attacks, is I am a real advocate. I went all the way to the Privy Council last year to fight for challenge against sedition. It was really to fight for freedom of expression. So I am really looking forward to some very robust discussions on these matters, right? So I welcome challenges. I take it on, in good stride. It's nothing personal. The other question is that if the screening committee does not pick me, as I said, that's why I quoted what the party said about me when I joined the party in 2020. My work does not stop with being an MP. I didn't become an MP to be someone. I became an MP to achieve something for my people. And I will continue to do that, being an MP or not being an MP. But I want to say one thing is clear, that if the party goes in the direction which they are going, what they are doing to the party's membership is another story. We can talk about individual self-making sacrifice, but when you're talking about the membership of your party, and you're talking about all those loyalists who I went at pains to discuss, that they go there time and again, you tell these people, listen, we need to show some demonstration of expression, and they know this is a call coming. They believe it is a call coming on behalf of the party. They show up there. They invest their resources. We have activists here this morning. They could tell you they leave everything. Some of them put their children and grandchildren by a neighbor and all of these things. It will not bode well for the membership of the United National Congress and the wider community if they go ahead with this farce. It is a sham. It is a farce. Oh, and I'm glad you raised that point. I have the form here, right? But there's a clause in it, I can't share it with you all. But what I could tell you is that in this form, there are certain stipulations or conditions which you have to affirm, right? So you have to affirm that you have not conducted yourself. I'm paraphrasing, right? So I can't run afoul of disclosing the contents. But it is to the effect that you will not conduct yourself in a manner which will bring the party into disrepute. Do you know that you have some sitting members in this NATEX who have to probably fill out the same form? What are they going to do when they assess this? They're going to pass that on their own selves, judgment on their own selves, that, boy, you know where that form says, I have litigation contemplated, or I am involved in litigation, or otherwise, that we could say, okay, that this question is now out the window. So they go in and pass that judgment for themselves when some of them themselves are the ones who bring the party into disrepute. You see, let me make this clear. I really like this question. I want to say this today, right? Allow other persons, those who are in support of Kamla Persad-Bissessar, those who are not any longer in support of her, myself, and let us be able to discuss this in the arena of an internal elections. In internal elections, somebody might make some argument. I might turn around and say, but listen, it sounds to me like you just want to keep Kamla at all costs. So you prefer to just have her as a leader. Don't mind we get into opposition in 2025. And that might be my view. And they might have a different view. But this is how the party constitution deals with these kinds of conflicts. That you get a fresh mandate. And I am saying that if they do go ahead and they do not seek the fresh mandate first, they are really going to run afoul of the letter and the spirit and intent of the United National Congress Constitution. This constitution was not drawn up by Kamla Persad-Bissessar. It was drawn up by those leaders who founded this party and who were there before her. What she should do, honorable leader should do, is to really respect this document, not this document, but respect the constitution, and those who come after her do the same. That is how we will present ourselves as a credible party. Right now we have one NATEX member, or two, or three, I have lost count, who are purportedly, I say purportedly, I don't want to say these things as statements or facts, but the media has been reporting it, that they are involved in litigation before the courts. Civil, quasi-civil, quasi-criminal charge of fraud and what and what. One party member the other day, and I don't say this to give any credence to whatever the PNM says, but do you all know that every debate that we sit in the parliament, Dr. Rowley, if he enters that debate, and not only him, I see everybody's trumping and following his suit. He's trumping and they are following. They say, but look, that human trafficker sit down right there. And I sit down there and check me. I wonder if it's me they're talking about. I know it's not me they're talking about. Of course it have innocent until proven guilty, and this is where people will have to assess in an internal campaign whether they feel that that person should be given the go ahead to go forward into the next general election. Politics is perception, my brother. And if you have perception of corruption, that is why I said today, I give no credence to whatever PNM propaganda is. But you have a serious credibility and perception issue. And until we change leadership, we will not be able to shake off those political perceptions. We are going to have a lot of problems. Sorry.
Be reselected as the candidate, the MP for your constituency. If it is you're saying that she has influence in the committee making the decisions and these threats, how confident are you in that? And well, you can go ahead and answer that question.
I have no confidence in her, and I have no confidence in the Natics that they will see that I stand for principle, that they will see that I am a man who is true, and that I stick to my word, that they will understand that I'm straightforward. I call it as I see it. I always try to say things internally. Today wasn't out of by vaps and vikiva, I always try to raise things respectfully, internally, team playing, style. But when you cannot have that, that is where, you have problems and we have to speak out like this. But I have no confidence in them that they will select me. What I do have confidence in is that the people of Chaguanas West will support me. That is what I have confidence of. And I have confidence that the majority of Trinidad and Tobago citizens, if not all, are right-minded, thinking people, and they want the better for their future and their children and everybody to come.
Mm-hmm. There was a resignation letter circulating.
I'm not giving any oxygen to that.
But you need to confirm or deny that it was from you.
And I said, for those who were not aware of it, you are wiser off for not having to read that garbage. And I said, for those who did read it, you know that is not my style, and I distance myself entirely with that. I don't want to give oxygen for that.
All right.
In fact, I want to say, all the reporters, this is not disclosing journalism privilege here. I just say it generally that except one, I think, online news person, every single reporter who contacted me concerning that said, MP, we know this is fake, but we would like to get your comment. And you know what my response was? Please do not give this any oxygen. It's not the first time they did that to me. I don't know who's behind it, but if it is fake, we must not give in to email gate propaganda that the document is entirely fake, but somehow we can look for truth in its contents. I mean, we must not do that. This country has to move forward and start back placing trust in leaders, and that responsibility falls on me as a leader, so that the population can have trust again, that when they see things, they say, no. That definitely can't be real. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to give any oxygen to it.
All right. Tell us, what is your current relationship with the opposition leader? Did you ever have conversations with her about allowing her to resign, speaking about her resignation?
No, I didn't call for opposition leader to resign,
I know, but
my message here today.
Reorganization.
That we should really, I have seen some of my colleagues make a noble call. It is in alignment with the Constitution of the United National Congress, and therefore all the issues that I have had over the period of time just came to fruition in my mind. Listen, how much longer you're going to seek re-selection, you need to say something about this, because these people, these other colleagues of mine, are pursuing a noble venture, and I just felt that, look, we need to say something now. I have not spoken to her about this, but I have tried to speak in the past. The last time that I recall speaking about something, and it was internal, there was a certain release that the leader of the opposition put out, and having put out the release, we saw it after, myself, I don't know about others, but I can speak for myself, and in an internal forum, I said respectfully, I disagree. That's all. That's all. You all know about it, the members of the public don't know about it until now, so it remained internal. I said respectfully, I disagree. And immediately I saw members of NATEX and this one and that one, and they started to call and they started to bash me, and you don't know, and if you don't understand something, you should ask questions and this and that and whatever. Mind you, that same person is on some kind of human trafficking perception, guilty of that perception-wise, right? And I said, but what is this about? Until this day, I'm glad you asked that question again. There was, you see these things, I don't pay attention to it at the time once it relates to me. If you ask me any question about a stone, a pebble, a pothole, riverbank, whatever, I could tell you that off the cuff. That is there in my mind. I lose sleep over it all the time. When you ask me something about myself, I wouldn't remember. Now I could tell you about another occasion when, following that same incident where I said I respectfully disagree, when that happened last year, September, October, whatever it is, then press conference, an opposition press conference, and what I deem to be a contrived question, that, well, I saw all the members of the party come out and say they support Mrs. Prasad Bisesa with that particular release. but one individual in particular did not. Is he conflicted? Because we have seen some statements from him. I never said anything publicly. I never put out a statement. Never. I had nothing to say out in the public. I didn't criticize. All I said is respectfully, I disagree in an internal forum. And I was even bashed in that press conference by an MP colleague and somebody who resembles a senator from time to time coming into the press conferences. And they all just changed their tune and they said, yes, 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 we all stand with the political leader and this and that or whatever. And maybe that member is conflicted, but we are not conflicted. Right? That's what they had to say about me. I never said anything. So that's what you get when you try to raise things in the party. You try to raise it. Rushton Parry, I saw it. I can't verify it, but I have trust in him. He seems to be of the ilk that when he says something, you could believe him. And when I heard him say that he sent letters, he sent emails or something to that effect, and he tried to raise certain issues, but he still is yet awaiting an audience, what does that say? That's why I said today, earlier, that leadership without accountability is not something of a modern democracy. It's not a feature of a modern democracy. That could only work, you could only have the towing of the line principle if it is you have proper functioning structures within the party that could deal with these issues. But if you don't have that, you have to let it wait, unfortunately, and when it starts to boil over, then this is what it comes to. But I have to do my duty.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Yvonne Webb, Newsday. On a point of clarity, you spoke about the clause in that nomination form with respect to, is it only with respect to litigation against possible candidates?
No, this is wider than that.
Okay, so I'm wondering.
Speaks of the litigation,
Right.
and there are others that have
Right.
where you have to affirm citizenship.
So I'm wondering if you have not breached that clause this morning.
I did not. I gave no information relating to anything specific. I generalized that these are the requirements that you seek in candidates. And some of these candidates would find themselves running afoul of these same things. So
Right.
generically, I have stated what I have to say, but I have not disclosed the contents of this document.
Okay, and I mean, we have heard other MPs, former MPs, speak about staying within to fight, and some, that even when you're outside, you'd continue to fight. But how confident are you? You talk about the members, you have confidence in the people of your constituency to support you, but how can you bring about change internally, the changes that you would have observed and spoken about here, if you are on the outside? Because clearly you speak about the greater good of the party and country. How can you do that on the outside?
No, well, first of all, if I understand the line of the question, I can bring about change within the party because I am inside now and I am speaking out. That is how I can bring about change. Even if I'm not an MP, I will continue to be a life member of the United National Congress. And as a life member, I can still speak out.
Can you be expelled?
Well,
is there a possibility?
Expulsion threatened before.
Yeah.
In fact, in the last week or two, some expulsion was threatened.
Because you have spoken about, you see...
Let me answer it this way. If I am to be expelled for speaking the truth, so be it.
Okay.
So be it.
And sorry. And another point of clarification, you spoke about not having confidence in the in Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and Natex with respect to your selection. Is it that you have no confidence in her period?
Well,
or just in that particular aspect?
I don't want to say period as though it's an absolute thing. In fact, in what my dissertation was this morning, right, for everybody to understand, I did even draw references to when I agreed with the position of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. But
course.
as a leader, she did not handle it in the best interest of the party.
Okay.
Right? And that is where you draw a line. So it's not an absolute position, but I'm saying that if we have to go into a general election, leadership change is needed. We need to have that. And I am not asking, you notice I didn't say that Kamala Prasad Bisesa step down, eh? Notice I didn't hurl no personal attacks at her, whatever it is. I'm saying that the party's constitution already provides for this scenario. And therefore, if you just follow the constitution and you call the internals, it will be resolved. And I will have to respect that result. I may not agree with it, but I'll have to respect it.
Any thoughts, let's say you are expelled from the party, any thoughts of forming a third party? Because there are other colleagues,
No.
maybe joining with Parry, Ford Khan.
Parry is not on a third party. He's a
No,
MP
let's say if
from
he's no
Mayhalu.
longer in the party and you all have similar interests.
I understand what the question is, but I think it goes too much into the realm of speculation. But I, for myself, I could tell you, and I have not detected in any way that any of those 4 colleagues of mine, in the utterances that I've been reading through your most reliable press, that they are speaking or considering forming any third party. That I have never seen that. And I don't think they are speaking along those lines. They are only speaking about adherence to the Constitution.
And how do you feel about the UNC joining with other political parties to prepare for the upcoming election?
You know, you're taking me down a memory lane here, right? Let me start on a light note to answer that question, and I'll give you the answer after, right? Do you know that there's a member of a third-party force, right, who said words to the effect, this is national statements, carried in the media, social and otherwise, said words to the effect that Kamla Prasad Bisesa was having extended weekends and wasn't showing up for work and for other various reasons which I will not repeat, that she was not on the job as Prime Minister. One of my predecessor MPs here said that she belonged to one of the most unsavory regimes. I leave it at that. And they are hugging, they are embracing, they are holding hands. And as Mr. Baswe Pandey used to say, they're making love on a UNC bed. So I think that in politics, there's always room for that third party cohesion. I am certainly not against it, but I think it has to pass through. The Constitution has arms. It provides for arms and structures. Some of those things have to be taken inside there and deliberated upon before you can actually say with some kind of certainty. It's not a one-person show. No political leader can just wake up and say they may have it in their mind, but they still have to follow the Constitution. Me personally, I would promote that kind of thing. I will not promote, however, unity at any cost there and at any price. It must be that you have unity, accepting that the basic morality principles are being upheld.
Final question. Do you know who are the other contenders, if any, for your constituency that would have filed
I'm not
nominations?
bothered to find out. Really, honestly, I don't have a care in the world to find out who else is filing for Shogunas West. But I will tell you that if they succeed, whereas I don't, I will support them. I will support them. I am a true son of the soil, and I will hold good to that. Any other questions from anybody? I want to let you all know that there's a customary way that I end as Shogunas West MP my meetings, which is I have cooked food, so I have doubles for everybody, right? So that is officially a close to this. I want to thank every single one of you, members of the party, members of the media, activists, and religious leaders. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at an end. Thank you.